Bob, it's been a while. We're through the spring. We'll talk about the freshmen in a little bit, but let's look back at those 12 practices. And before we get to that, I kind of want to do, something when we talked our features on Tom Johnson and Steve Carlson, one thing they both touched on was how much better shape they were in and the more that they could do in the winter because of the bubble. And everyone talked about the bubble just having those practices. But how much better was spring because of what the bubble provided from the end of your season, through, late February, early March?
Through April, really. I mean, this has been not the greatest weather for the last few months. And you don't realize when you don't have it how much you'd use it. And now that we had it, and I didn't even realize it, when Molly and we were working through this, and what an unbelievable gift. And every workout, our guys use it to stretch. Our guys, I know, just by the timing in our routes and completion percentages and lack of mental errors, the captain's practices, things that, whatever they'd call that when they're working together, with that. And then our workouts, our off-season workouts just went phenomenal. And it just creates a great vibe. And, even our spring game, it's early April and the weather isn't up to par, and we go in the bubble and have our spring game in there. And it really had the practices, we only went in there twice for practice, but they had a lot of juice, had a lot of energy. It was like opening up those new toys.
Yeah, seeing a couple of those practices, you could see the energy in there. Let's hit on the offense first. You lose the Ivy League Player of the Year in Chad Knopf, who, by the time we release this, may be drafted, maybe not, but certainly somebody who's going to get a look by an NFL team. It's a huge loss. Potentially another Ivy League Player of the Year coming back, who could be your starter next year. But you had a bunch of guys that had a real chance to get some film, get some looks from the coaches, really get comfortable in this offense. So look at those quarterbacks. How did you feel with what they did in those 12 spring practices?
Yeah, and we went through it the year before because Chad, the medical redshirt situation in the Ivy League, they had to sit out the spring. And so John Lovett got 12 practices. He completed like 74% of his passes. He was so much more in tune with making points and directing the offense and doing those things. Unfortunately, he had a setback in the summer. But then Chad stepped up and had an unreal year. Well, Kevin Davidson and Zach Keller and all the quarterbacks, Cole Smith, John Tracy, got way more opportunities, with John having to sit out, during the spring. And I thought they came, they really made strides. I love how Kevin threw the ball. He got much better in terms of the poise and all those things. And, he still got to iron some things out. He's a sophomore, and he's still got to iron some things out. But his polish, and you just saw his confidence soaring. Zach Keller is rare smart. I mean, you see him, and he's like a coach on the field. And the two of those guys were so accurate with what they were doing. And Cole Smith and John Tracy, both made huge strides. Like their development from August of last year to mid-April, was significant. So I just like how those guys work. I like how that room operates. There's been a great culture here, especially Quinn and Connor Michelson, and the efforts they made, and passed that down to Chad and John. And now we see these young guys, coming up, and they're going to continue that culture. And when you have 3 players of the year at one position in 5 years, and you break almost every Ivy League record, that position gets a lot of attention.
Absolutely. You have 3 big touchdown scorers returning next season. One of them, obviously, not playing in the spring, and Jesper Horsted because of baseball. But the other 2 are juniors who, you want to see even more from next year. And those are guys that were all Ivy League last year and just major producers in Charlie Volker and Steve Carlson. So what's the next step for them, and how did they look, not only, you know, as standout football players, but now as guys who have to be leaders?
Yeah, no, Steven, I remember sitting here last spring, and I raved about Steven Carlson and the jump he made in the offseason, and he just continues to do that. His work ethic is off the charts. He's not a very vocal leader, but he just comes out and works so hard every day. He has a knack for making contested catches, and he's just so consistent and reliable. And he had a tremendous spring. And you know, Charlie, I thought Charlie had this phenomenal training camp last year, and then had a illness that sat him out the early parts of the year. That's tough to recover from. For him to be whatever he was, third or fourth in the nation in points per game,
Right.
and to do that, considering the time he missed, and to pick right back up and have a good year, I think we're just going to see, you know, knock on wood, he stays, you know, healthy throughout. He's primed to have a big year.
You know, there's a lot of guys to look at, and obviously we'll have the whole fall. But one position that, you know, there's a lot of areas where you're going to return a number of players. One area where you're going to have, you know, some graduation losses is on the offensive line. You know, Swigert was multiple-time All-Ivy, Ramirez multiple-time All-Ivy, Bush, your starting center. You know, and that's a position that not only does it require talent, but it requires chemistry and rhythm and time to gel. So what do you use the spring to kind of evaluate individuals and try to figure out a pecking order, or are you trying to kind of create some chemistry during the spring?
A little of both. I mean, we put them in situations where they're constantly competing and doing that. Obviously, Riley Radosevich has been a multiple
Right.
All-Ivy player, and he's returning. And I thought George Attia was very consistent last year and played at an All-Ivy or near All-Ivy level, and both those guys made jumps. And it's, you know, the pieces around them and behind them that are the most critical ones. Andre Guest just came into his own. We saw, you know, Eric Ramirez missed training camp last year, and Andre got the bulk of the reps, and we saw him making a good jump. And then Eric came back and played so well. Andre didn't see, you know, 40 snaps a game. He saw 10 or 15
Right.
or whatever it was. And I thought his spring, he made that big jump. Like, we're real excited about what he's doing. And I think we've developed some depth behind those guys. You know, Stefan Ivanisevic was healthy, and he missed all last fall for the most part with an injury. And it was good to get him back. And, you know, we got to get him more refined with some things, and he's missed some development time, but he's on his way to do that. You know, at center, Alex Dieters and Nico Ivanisevic really battled it out. They both do different things well, and they're both improving on the things that they've struggled on in the past, but I think they're both incredibly intelligent players. We run a lot of different things on defense. It was rare for them to make a mistake, and they're following in the footsteps of Bush and Darrow and some tremendous, Joe Goss, some tremendously smart centers. And just like the quarterback position, there's been a lot of leadership, you know, there in that offensive line room from the centers. And, you know, Alex is following right in their footsteps. And Jack Corso is easily the best athlete we have on the offensive line. I thought his best practice was the spring game. He really played extremely well in the spring game. And there's a bunch of young guys I felt like I wish we had 3 more,
Right.
you know, 4 more, because they really started to make a jump. And Jack was one of the older guys. I was like, man, he really, the tail end started to come across from a technical standpoint. And then at left tackle, you know, Brent Holder and Ryan Huth battled it out, you know, during there. They're both athletic. They're both tremendous athletes. They're long. Mitch Swigert is one of the all-time great offensive linemen of Princeton.
Big shoes to fill.
Yeah, and you know, you probably go back to Chris Tice when you compare him to a tackle.
Right.
You know, that's how well he played for 4 years. But I thought Holder and Huth both show the potential to be very good players in this league. And they do different things well, but they're making strides in the weight room. They're going to have to, when the Kurt Halubas get back, that's going to be a huge test for them. And the great thing is they get to go against him and guys like that every day in practice. Right. And that's going to see them hopefully make that jump where we're not going to have to provide any help. Like last year, we didn't provide any help for Mitch Swigert in 4 years.